They had books on oxes, though. Welcome, everyone, to Buddhist Center. My name is Jeff Allen, and once again, we're so fortunate to meet, talk about the Dharma, and to learn about the things that will really help us in all of our lives, help us in this life to be more reasonable. And what better way to learn about how to be more reasonable and learn about the path in a clear way than to look at it through the lens of Lama Tsongkhapa's texts. And tonight, once again, we're looking at the foundation of all good qualities, or the source of all my good, as it's entitled in our text. And it's a prayer for a mountain of blessings. Excuse me, it's also called. So it's such an incredible text. As Rinpoche always said, that Lama Tsongkhapa was able to take the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment and the great treatise on the stages of the tantric path to enlightenment and really summarize them into this beautiful text, this beautiful poem that shows us all of the various stages that we will have to realize if we wish to achieve the state of fearlessness and infinite happiness. And it's a guarantee that if we engage in all of the things that are presented in these wonderful texts, that we will achieve that state of Buddhahood, because everyone has Buddha nature. We have the Buddha potential, or Buddha nature, that is the proliferating Buddha nature. That means that our mind can transform from an impure state into a pure state of mind, and that the mind itself has no nature from its own side. There's no objective existence of the mind. So therefore, that emptiness allows for the mind to transform into a pure state of mind, because it isn't static as this or that. It's empty of inherent existence, as all phenomena are. So tonight, before we get in any further, let's get into a posture. Let's get our minds calmed down. Let's become more reasonable. Let's be able to think about the Dharma in a pure way. Abandon the faults of the upside down vessel that doesn't allow anything for it to come into our ears because we're not paying attention. Abandon the fault of a leaky vessel that doesn't have us paying enough attention, so our mind doesn't hold on to it and we forget things. And let's abandon the fault of a contaminated vessel, where we would come to a teaching with kind of a closed mind and kind of preconceived notions of what this is or that is, that contaminate our ability to truly hear the teaching. And we know that we have to have the wisdom arisen from hearing, and hearing things properly in order to analyze proper things. Because if we analyze improper things, it won't lead to the ability to see emptiness, because emptiness is the opposite of the improper topic, or opposite of a topic that is of no benefit. So anyway, without further ado, let's get into a clear, calm state of mind that will allow us to start to build a motivation of love and compassion for all sentient beings, that recognizes that all sentient beings are empty of inherent existence. We are empty of inherent existence. Our love for them is empty of inherent existence. Our compassion for them is empty of inherent existence. Yet that doesn't mean that our love, our compassion in themselves and ourselves don't exist. It means they don't exist from their own side independently, in terms of having some objective reality that's findable, that is separate from the subjective perceiver, separate from the perceiver or the perception that the perceiver has of the reality that he or she is identifying and thinking exists from its own side objectively, but it's merely from the side of the perceiver, and merely impermanence in some cases, causes and conditions and collections of parts coming together, and then being brought into reality through the power of nominal designation. So being able to find that things exist through the power of nominal designation. So get into the 7-point Vairakana posture. We've gone over many times before, and I won't go over all the details of that. You can look at previous posts on all the platforms. You can find the 7-point Vairakana posture and me explaining it in a whole lot of details. So get into the 7-point Vairakana posture. And now we're going to get our minds more reasonable. Our focal object is going to be the breathing in and out and counting, as we've done many, many times before. And we will repeat this ritual, and you should repeat this ritual every day over and over again, as much as you can, so that you can get your mind more focused, so that you have the ability to focus the mind very, very well. And then what do you want to focus it on? You want to focus it on the nature of reality. And until your mind's calm enough to really have as its object of observation the emptiness that you're analyzing, you'll never ever be able to cross the barriers that we find even in the path, to be able to get from the path of accumulation to the path of preparation for a dull capacity practitioner like myself. So it's quite important for us to get our minds calmed down and be able to get them to the point where we can focus on something singly. So the way we do that is we establish an object that we're going to practice focusing on singly. So in this case, it's the breathing in and out. So the focal object is breathing in, filling the lungs and the diaphragm all the way to the top, turning the breath around, breathing out, and then counting. So we're breathing in a very calm, normal fashion, not very excitedly, not very quickly. We don't want to hear the breath hurriedly going through the nose, and we don't want to be doing it so slow that we feel like we're drowning or something. So we're just breathing in and out in our normal fashion, but our mind, our mental consciousness is focusing on the breathing in, the breathing out, and the number. So our focal object is the breathing in, the breathing out, and the number. And what we're trying to do is make sure that it stays on that focal object. We're guarding against any kind of excitement or scatteredness that would come to our mind that is something different than the focal object of breathing in, breathing out, and the number, or dullness that comes into the mind. We start breathing in and breathing out in the number, and starts to be darker and sleepier, and it's almost like we're taking steps backwards while we're in our meditation. We can almost feel the sinking that takes place when this occurs. If you've done single-pointed meditation and you've done breathing meditation, then you've had this experience probably where at times your mind's all over the place, but at other times it's just so sleepy, and it's almost like the breathing becomes like a lullaby. And if you don't have some sort of guard on deck when the lullaby starts or the scattering starts, your mind can just be taken off into that direction and brought to its final destination of completely, busy thinking about something different altogether, even than Dharma practice in an excited, scattering way, or to the point where you feel your eyes starting to close because you're getting so sleepy. So the way that we guard against these things, excitement and dullness, or lethargy, laxity, excitement and lethargy, sometimes scattering around, and a darkness of the mind, or just a kind of like a sleepiness of the mind, is to have mindfulness, which is knowing what the focal object is. Okay, so our focal object, breathing in, breathing out, and the number. And an introspection, which is a spy in the mind, making sure that we're actually doing what we told our mind to do. We told our mind our focal object is breathing in and out in the number, and we're not going to stray off of it. We're not going to let our mind scatter, and we're not going to let it get sleepy. And the way that we're going to not allow that to occur is we're going to not forget the object of observation, which is the breathing in and out in the number, which is our mindfulness. And we're going to have a little spy in the back of our mind called introspection or vigilance that is checking to see whether or not our mind is excited or sleepy. So we don't allow ourselves to get unclear. We are at all times trying to stay extremely focused. So this is the reasoning behind the posture. The posture is supporting the focus of the mind. The posture is something we're being mindful of. We're being mindful that we're sitting in this posture with our back straight. We're being mindful that we're not forgetting the object of observation, which is the breathing in and out in the number. Where our introspection is making sure that our mindfulness has a hold of the focal object and is paying attention to make sure it's not wavering And this is how we rein it back in. We use the mindfulness when we see there's excitement or dullness to rein back in what the focal object is. Because the focal object isn't an unclear, sleepy breathing in and out, nor is it a distracted breathing in and out. It's just breathing in and out in the number. So just a little bit about how we would get to the point of being able to get this single-pointed concentration and be able to start with this close placement and go through the stages of shamatha to be able to achieve that single-pointed concentration and this mental and physical pliancy that brings about this shamatha, this calm abiding. So it's really something that we train in, something that we have to do over and over and over again in order to get our minds acquainted with it, to be able to do the tasks that we want to be able to do as Buddhist practitioners. And if we want to be able to realize these topics that we're going to go over in the earlier Lamrim of, the life of leisure and opportunity and the teacher and death and impermanence and the three scopes and karma and refuge and all of these things, if our mind's not calm, we aren't going to really taste the full nectar of these topics because we won't be focused on them well enough to see the depth, to see what they really have to offer us. So a calm mind gives us so many benefits, not just benefits in meditation, but I think that a calm, more reasonable mind in a conventional worldly sense, in a mundane fashion, is the one that you want to have. You want to be able to not make a split-second decision that could change your life forever and it was a bad one. You want to be able to reflect and calm things down and slow the situation down enough to be able to make the right decisions in life. And if your mind isn't calm, you won't have that kind of window of time where you could disallow the attachment to take over, disallow the anger to take over, because it will just be your norm to not be in control. So this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to get in control. It's very, very hard to do, but what makes us good Buddhist practitioners is the more we subdue our mind, abandon evil, engage in perfect virtues, and subdue your mind. This is the teaching of the Buddha. The more and more we subdue our mind, the more and more we can abandon evil and engage in virtuous activities. It just makes sense. If your mind's calm, you're not going to angrily react. If your mind's calm, you'll be able to not run after the next thing you think is going to make you happy if your mind's calm enough to recognize that it probably won't. So don't ever underestimate breathing in, breathing out, and counting, because this sets a foundation for you then to be able to get the mind calm and then maybe take the focal object like we do the Lord Buddha and be able to actually hold on to it hands-free. Not having anything else in your mind except the image of the Buddha, or the image of Tara, the image of Chenrezig, the image of Vajrapani, image of Kala Chakra, image of Guya Samaja, image of Yamantaka, whatever your image is, your picked image, and as complex as it can be, for you as a practitioner. You will be able to get to that place by first slowing down conceptuality, as the Buddha said, and as Rinpoche told us many times. You want to slow down conceptuality, you have a problem with conceptuality, engage in breathing meditation. And then when you have less conceptuality, then it becomes actually a reasonable idea that you could calm your mind down enough to look at something singly in your mind as a focal object for 4 hours straight in a state of bliss, of pliancy, mental and physical pliancy that comes down a little bit. I understand for the scholars out there, the bliss comes down a little bit when you're in this single pointed concentration, but we will be able to get to that point by starting at the point where we're at. But if we don't start at the point we're at and aren't really, really honest with ourselves about our ability to calm our mind down, and if we aren't honest with ourselves and we just keep studying stuff and then trying to do some deity yoga and some mantras and wondering why nothing's really, really happening at a swift rate, why we're not able to just, have every day kind of focus on this, why we're so distracted some days and then we really go for it for a few days, then we're just so distracted, then we really go for it. It's because our mind is not subdued. It's because our mind isn't, subduing your mind, I know, takes emptiness and a calm mind that looks at it. But our mind hasn't gotten calm enough to even look at anything reasonably, even go about our daily lives reasonably, let alone calm enough to see emptiness directly. And if we don't have a union of calm abiding and special insight, we don't enter the path of preparation of heat, peak, patience, and last mundane state. And it's the last mundane state, which is the last non-superior, non-Arya being state that an ordinary being dwells in right before they see emptiness. And that was brought about by a union of calm abiding and special insight and a refinement of the object of negation, of the inference, a refinement of that inference that just gets so subtle that the kind of conceptuality that's taking place still isn't even apparent to the meditator, and it doesn't even seem to be a separation between the object of observation of emptiness and the subject of the meditator, and the mind meditating, the wisdom consciousness meditating on it. It starts to not even have a sign within it, a conceptual sign within it, and there's no distinction almost at that point, and then the being can see emptiness directly. So if you want to do that stuff, if that sounds good to you, because the only way you can cut the root of cyclic existence is to see emptiness. It's not through bodhicitta and love and compassion. That's what, combined with wisdom, will allow you to be Buddha. But without wisdom, you can't achieve an abiding nirvana, and you can't achieve Buddhahood. So you have to have that wisdom that cuts the root of cyclic existence, that's combined with your renunciation or combined with your bodhicitta. You can want to get out of cyclic existence day and night all you want, but if you're not applying the actual remedy to the origin, you're not going to. And the remedy to the origin of suffering is the wisdom realizing emptiness. So we have to apply that kind of remedy, and that wisdom realizing emptiness can only be brought about if you have calm abiding, a calm enough mind to be able to see emptiness directly. So the Buddha never negated inference. We know that. We know the Buddha said that we have to get there by inference. The yogis dwell in non-discursiveness, but we arrive there through conceptuality. It says it right in the Chandrakirti's entrance to the middle way. That we get there through the conceptual. We get to that non-discursive state that the yogis dwell in through the conceptual, and then eventually being able to go from that last mundane state of the path of preparation to seeing emptiness directly. And if we're on the bodhisattva track, and we're as a dull bodhisattva track, then we become first ground bodhisattvas, and then the coarse afflictions are no more, and we can no longer be forced into the lower realms. And that's a really good deal. So it makes sense to breathe in and out and count that breath. So let's do that. Let's let's guard our minds. Like Shantideva says, when you're in a battle and you drop your sword, you pick it up right away because you're in a battle. You don't just leave it on the ground. So here, when you drop the sword of mindfulness, in the introspection sees, the spy in your mind sees you just dropped, the weapon that's going to combine with the wisdom to see emptiness. You don't allow it to go on. You see that as a major, major enemy to your ability to end cyclic existence. And you don't allow it to go on, because you're in a war against the afflictions. You're in a war against the root affliction that grasps at the I and phenomena as being truly established. And the more you put down your weapons, all the various weapons that the Buddha taught us to use to combat the ego and combat the self-cherishing attitude, the more it just festers, gets bigger, and becomes a worse enemy to battle. You've been doing so much work to battle that enemy. Don't let the weapon down and move back. Don't backtrack. So the way you don't backtrack when you get down on your meditation cushion is to allow your introspection to see that your mindfulness is holding on to what it's supposed to, and you're not dropping that mindfulness, because you know that mindfulness, that ability to hold a focal object, is what's going to be your ticket out of cyclic existence, what's going to be your ticket to becoming a Buddha. Okay, so it's pretty important. Okay, let's do some breathing. Now we'll add the focal object of Buddha Shakyamuni in the front generation, about 2 feet away from us at eye height, about the size of your thumb, about 2 inches tall. If you're not familiar with Buddha Shakyamuni is right behind my head, above my head. So not with your eyes, though. See if you can just get the visual of Buddha Shakyamuni and then imagine with your mind Buddha Shakyamuni while you're focusing on the breathing in, breathing out, and the counting. Buddha Shakyamuni is in that space in front of you at eye height, about 2 feet away. Beautiful, radiant, three-dimensional, fully light body. Just such a beautiful, beautiful being. So focusing on the breathing in, breathing out, the counting, and now adding the image of Buddha Shakyamuni. We're so lucky to be able to be alive in a time where the Buddha's teachings are here. We've been presented with them in a flawless way from Khenser Geshe Wandak. We know the excellent qualities that the Buddha has because Khenser Geshe Wandak showed us those excellent qualities in Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. Those excellent qualities of body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. Those spontaneous, unbelievable, excellent qualities that we've learned about. Those excellent qualities that we will possess. We have Buddha nature. Our mind is empty of inherent existence, just like the Buddha's mind right now. Our mind has the same exact nature. Our clear light mind has the same exact nature as the Buddha's mind. Our mind can change and transform from its impure state to the pure state of the Buddha's mind, where the afflictive obstructions and the cognitive obstructions or obstructions to omniscience are removed. We will achieve that state. We're so fortunate. We will achieve that state through the stages of the path to enlightenment that we've been taught so clearly. Recognizing our own suffering and the pain that we experience from birth, aging, sickness, and death, meeting with unpleasant things, separating from pleasant things, not getting what we want, and the suffering of this body we've been forced into, and this mind we have with so much anxiety, depression, fear, and this body that can be hurt so easily, just forced into it, forced into all of these sufferings over and over again, moving so fast, moving so quickly, 1,000 moments a second towards birth, aging, sickness, and death, from separation from the pleasant, moving so quickly towards it. We were conceived and began to die, but we don't see it. We see ourselves as so permanent and so static. But Buddha stated that the real suffering is that we're forced again and again by our ignorance into a set of aggregates, and forced by our karma and our afflictions, the karmic seeds, and we don't have any choice. And that lack of choice is misery. And we're so fortunate that the Buddha has shown us what causes that misery, shows us that that misery can end, and shows us how the misery can end. And we know that we can end our own misery and achieve an abiding nirvana and get rid of the afflictive obstructions and have a complete freedom from all of those types of suffering. But what we really want, and what makes the most sense so that we can achieve all of our goals and all sentient beings' goals, is to not only remove the afflictive obstructions, but the obstructions to omniscience as well. And that will take us loving and caring for all sentient beings and putting their needs before our own. And we recognize in our current state we're unable to do that. But we wish that we could. We wish that we could realize each and every steps of the combined path of the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, and the equalizing and exchanging self with others practices that have been so generously given to us. May we aspire to realize each and every one of those things, and may those realizations be fed by our realization of renunciation. We recognize that currently we have so many things that don't allow us to help others. We can't help ourselves. We're caught in cyclic existence with all these sentient beings. Those beings we care about so much, we can't even help. We can't help ourselves. We recognize we must become Buddhas for the sake of all sentient beings. If we want to be able to help ourselves, if we want to be able to help everyone else, if we want to be the most reliable guide in the entire universe, we must become a being who has the excellent qualities of body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities, the perfection of wisdom, perfection of patience, the perfection of compassion and love, the perfection of power, the perfection of skillful means. We must become a being who has those qualities, and Buddha is the only being who has all of those qualities, has abandoned all faults, and has only excellent qualities. And this is the being we will become and can become. And we say to ourselves, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And we hold this thought very, very dear. May I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Let it saturate your mind. Let this become who you are, a being who is vested day and night in becoming a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, because you yourself have realized the plights, the downfalls, all of the horrific things of cyclic existence. And you recognize that for you to achieve all of your own goals and for you to be able to help everyone out of this horrible ocean of misery, you must become a Buddha. So let that saturate your mind and say, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Hold this thought. From that pure state, that pure loving and compassionate state that's making this your desire, your number one desired wish to become a Buddha for everyone's sake. Imagine now that Buddha Shakyamuni, from your intense love and compassion for all sentient beings, explodes and transforms into the entire merit field. So imagine that all the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas now are in the merit field. Imagine Khenser Geshe Wandak. Imagine His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Geshe Dorje Damdu, Geshe Agala, Umzala, Geshe Mala Tenzin Ladrana, all the holy nuns, all the holy monks. Imagine all the holy gurus, any being, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, Dema Loche Rinpoche, all these beings who have come, Shaka Gen Nima, Khenser Pema Jetsun, all these beings who have come and have come back to show us how to be able to be free from suffering and be able to achieve infinite happiness and bliss. Any being that you relate to that you know is a holy being who comes to teach us again and again and again how to achieve fearlessness and how to achieve bliss. Imagine in the space in front of you. Imagine all the beings of the extensive deeds lineage, that beautiful lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Lord Maitreya, to Asanga, to Basubandhu and Dharmakirti and Dignaga and Haribhadra and Vimuktasena and Shakyaprabha and Gunaprabha. Imagine all these holy beings that teach us all the grounds and paths in such a clear way. Imagine all these holy beings in the space in front of you. Imagine all the holy beings of the profound view lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Manjushri to Nagarjuna and Buddha Palita and Aryadeva and Chandrakirti and Chandrarashita and Shantideva and Baba Vega. Imagining all of these holy beings in the space in front of you, in the lineage of blessings of Tilopa and Naropa and Marpa and Milarepa, and then imagining then Lama Salimpa and Atisha and Drontompa and the three Kadampa lineages and all the holy beings of the Nyingma, Kagyu, Sakya, and Galup orders, all in the space in front of you, and imagining Lama Tsongkhapa and Kirtubje and Jelsupje, and all the highest Yoga Tantra deities, Performance Tantra deities, Action Tantra deities, 35 Buddhas, Protector deities, all the beings you can possibly imagine, all these holy beings, imagine the space in front of you in the merit field, and imagine that they're so full of bliss and so happy that you're here tonight and that you're studying the Dharma, that you're reciting the Dharma. You're going to have the wisdom arisen from hearing, wisdom arisen from contemplation, and the wisdom arisen from meditation. So imagine that the merit field is so full of bliss and so full of happiness. Now imagine that you have infinite hands and grab all sentient beings by the hands, the hell, hungry ghost beings, animals, humans, demigods, and gods. Imagine that you bring all sentient beings to the place we are right now. or where you are right now. Imagine that you bring all sentient beings there. And now, imagine that now that you've brought all sentient beings here, the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas erupt with bliss. And you begin to see a brewing of light rays and nectars, white, red, and blue. Light rays and nectars beginning to brew. The merit field's almost shaking with bliss. Imagine that yourself and all sentient beings around you that you've led here to bring to hear the teachings have a white Om on their crown. You're yourself and all sentient beings, white Om on your crown signifying your body, a red Ah at your throat signifying your speech, and a blue Hum at your heart signifying your mind. So yourself and all sentient beings have Om, white, red, Ah, Hum, blue, body, speech, and mind, respectively. So now imagine that all the Gurus and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas see that all sentient beings are here. Everyone is here without bias. Everyone here is for one reason, to become a Buddha. And that's all the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas want, is for us to become Buddhas, to have complete fearlessness, to have complete bliss. So now the bliss that they have is they can't hold it back. And we imagine that white light rays and nectar shower down and transform into white Oms and dissolve into our crowns and all sentient beings' crowns and transform our bodies into pure bodies. Imagine that red light rays and nectar shower down onto light rays and nectars from the bliss of the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas shower down on us and all sentient beings and transforms into red Ahs and dissolve into our throats and all sentient beings' throats and purify our speech. Now imagine that blue light rays and nectars from the bliss of the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas shower down on us and all sentient beings, and those blue light rays and nectars transform into blue Hums and dissolve into our hearts and all sentient beings' hearts and transform our minds into a pure minds. Now imagine that there's complete bliss. All the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas have complete bliss, and now you and all sentient beings, just for a moment, abide in this complete bliss. Imagine that the result has occurred, that you have a pure body, speech, and mind, the pure Vajra mind of the Buddha. Imagine that you're abiding in the ability to simultaneously perceive conventional and ultimate reality without any kind of barrier. And imagine that you're able to sit in that state, whatever that moment would feel like what would feel like to you right now. Just imagine you're in the pure state of Buddhahood. Okay, now let's go ahead and recite the Heart Sutra and imagine that you are leading all sentient beings in this recitation, and that you and all sentient beings are thinking about the implicit and the explicit meaning of the Heart Sutra, recognizing that explicitly the second turning of the wheel, Dharma, teaches the ultimate view of reality, the lack of true existence of all phenomena, the lack of objective existence of all phenomena, and shows that how things conventionally exist subjectively, but ultimately have no true existence. And we find the second turning of the wheel of Dharma where the Madhyamika Prasangika view is presented and the final view of Buddha is presented. So explicitly we find this teaching on the Madhyamika Prasangika view of emptiness, and then that's explicitly, I hope I said explicitly, and then implicitly we find the teaching on the 5 paths of the Mahayana path of accumulation, path of preparation, path of seeing, path of meditation, and path of no more learning. So when we recite the Heart Sutra mantra, it's really important for us to think about the emptiness of true existence, but then recognizing that that Heart Sutra mantra says Teyata Om Gate, path of accumulation, Gate, path of preparation, Paragate, path of seeing, Parasamgate, path of meditation, Bodhisoha, path of no more learning, of the Buddhahood, the state of Buddhahood. And we see Teyata Om, and the Om, we say, has 3 syllables in Sanskrit, and it stands for the body, speech, and mind. Uma, I think, are the Sanskrit syllables. I'm sorry if I made a mistake. But we see those 3 syllables, and they stand for body, speech, and mind when we hear the commentary on it. It's like the head of a mantra, the head of something, body, speech, and mind. And we can see how it can stand for our body, speech, and mind that goes through Teyata Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, and then bodhisoha. So our body, speech, and mind is transformed from an impure body, speech, and mind to a pure body, speech, and mind through the 5 paths. Or we can look at it as the pure body, speech of the mind of the Buddha, that we will become independence upon these 5 paths, 4 paths that lead to the 5th path of bodhisoha. So it's important to think about this while we recite the Heart Sutra and not just kind of daydream. So I'm going to recite the Heart Sutra in, I guess, Tibetan. We're going to do Tibetan tonight. Let me take a sip here. I just decided to do that, so hopefully I don't blow it. Tashidale. Baba Jereji Baradi Shiminimba Juzo Jagagido Bhagavati Brajaparamita Randeya Bugido Jamdende Ma Jereji Baradi Shiminimba Bombo Jigo Digi Dagi Duba Judina Jamdende Jabi Jago Bumbi Rig Longi Gendun Jambodon Janju Zambi Gendun Jambodon Daji Jushuzi Tize Jamdende Samo Nawanje Jawu Jiji Nanandi Dingi Lanyam Bazozo Yandi Tize Janju Zamba Zamba Jambo Baba Janrezi Wanju Jereji Baradi Shimba Zamo Juba Nila Nama Naji Bombong Abo Dita Lion Doma Nabo Dao Dene Sanje Ji Tu Sedan Demba Sharebu Shanju Zamba Zamba Jabo Baba Janrezi Wanshu La De Gechi Mezo Rijibon Galala Shereji Baro de Shimba Samo Juba Jeba Duba De Jida Labaja De Gechi Me Badan Shanju Zamba Zamba Jambo Baba Janrezi Wanshu Gesidan Demba Sharada Di Bula De Gechi Mezo Sharebu Rijibon Galala Shereji Baro de Shimba Samo Juba Jeba Juba De Dida Namba Daba Jade Bomong Abo Dida Jan Ranjin Je Doma Naba Yandaba Jesu Dao Zu Dambo Domini Zuzo Zule Domini Shemayano Domini Lejan Zushin Mayano Dejan Duzo Wadan Dushe Dan Namba Sheba Nandombo Jarebu Dida Judanji Domani De Zeni Meba Majeba Magaba Jema Meba Jema Janjo Jao Meba Gawa Meba Jarebu Dida Wena Domini Lazume Zorme Dujeme Dujeme Naba Sheba Me Mime Name Name Jeme Lume Ime Zume Drame Drime Rome Rejeme Jume Do Migame Bene Ijikame Iji Naba Shebe Bada Yame Do Mariba Zeba Meba Negashi Megashi Zebe Bada Yame Do Deshan Dudin Yawadan Gojo Wandan Gompa La Me Yashi Me Dobo Mema Doba Yame Do Sharebu Dido Wena Janju Samba Nando Bame Biji Shereji Baro de Shimbala Denji Nede Semla Jiba Mejin Daba Medo Jinjila de Shinjula Deni Nyanile de Bidarshindu Duzundu Nambar Jube Zanje Danje Jang Shereji Baro de Shimbala Deni Lana Mebe Yandaba Zobi Janju Duba Ngumba Zoba Zanje Zo Deta Wena Shereji Baro de Shimbinga Ripa Chembenga Lana Mebenga Menyamba Danyamenga Dunya Chamju Rabju Shewa Shibinga Mitsumbe Na Demba Shepa Shade Shereji Baro de Shimbinga Mepa Teata Om Gate Parasangate Bodhi Soha Sharibu Shanju Semba Zemba Jambo Deta Shereji Baro de Shimba Samolala Bajao The Najom Den De Dingenzi De Le Shende Shanju Zemba Jambo Baba Generazi Wanju La Lezo Sheja Wajene Lezo Rijibon Dadashane Chiradu De Dembu Shintu Shereji Baro de Shimba Samola Jabaja De Deshin Chepa Nanjan Jasu Yerongo Jomden Deji De Getsi Gatsi Netsiran Demba Sharada Di Budan Shanju Zemba Jambo Baba Generazi Wanju Dan Tam Chedan Dembi Dibi Gode Dada Lada Midan Lama Yedan Jiza Jibi Jiten Yerande Jomden Deji Zumbala Nyomba Do Gala Jube Nejo Damba Ne Nguje Duju Ngai Dudo Jenju Babo Lama Yibu Shinsi Nizun Gandro Zola Jazelo Agazamara Jandara Zamara Be Agazamara Jazana Aga Samara Janara Samara Be Deata on Gate Parasangati Bodhiso Papa Gonchu Sanchi Kai Dembe Doji Lobo Doji Mebo Doji Shiva Doji Jagi Baji Medu Beja Tanji Sherin Korea So Agiri Donjaji Shiwa Da Medun Bejan Andra Wadan Tumba Junjin Bonzon Zon Georgi Tashi De Jandan Da De Lejo. Outer mandala offering is a request for teaching. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas High, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Idam Guru Radha Mandala Gam Niradayami. Zanye Jadan Jye Jananda Janju Badu Dani Jazuji Dagi Jije Jibe Zananji Dela Benji Zanje Jubajo Zanye Jadan Jye Jananda Janju Badu Dani Jazuji Dagi Jije Jibe Zananji Dela Benji Zanje Jubajo Zanye Jadan Jye Jananda Janju Badu Dani Jazuji Dagi Jije Jibe Zananji Drala Benji Zanje Jubarjo. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the Immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. The one who transformed into the reliable guide motivated by altruism to benefit sentient beings, the teacher Sugata and protector, to you I make prostrations. If you are attached to this life, you are not a spiritual practitioner. If you are attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you are attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. May this teaching be heard and understood in the language of all sentient beings. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending on all the different platforms. I'm sorry I can't do questions and answers because there's so much going on. I want to be able to give you a complete teaching without any kind of distraction. And anybody who's new to this, you could get an idea of what it would be like to be at a traditional, Buddhist teaching. So without further ado, right now, I've said that enough times tonight, we're looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's Source of All My Good, Foundation of All Good Qualities, and we've been looking at it through the lens of Pabonka Rinpoche's text commentary on this beautiful, beautiful poem that Lama Tsongkhapa wrote. And Lama Tsongkhapa wrote it in terms of how he experienced the path and how he would, what he would wish to pray for as a practitioner, and what he prayed for as a practitioner to be able to achieve what he achieved. When we look at the abbreviated stages of the path by Lama Tsongkhapa, he ends, a lot of the stanzas with saying, I, the yogi, have practiced in this way. You too, seeking liberation, please practice like this, basically. And here, Lama Tsongkhapa is really showing us how we should look in a beautiful way at the stages of these paths to enlightenment, and how they're so necessary to understand one by one in order to truly achieve the realizations that the Buddha talked about. It's very easy to have partial instructions and maybe feel good a little while about some things that you're doing in terms of practice, but if they aren't working at getting rid of ignorance, if they're not working at cutting the root of cyclic existence in some way, then all they're heading towards is some sort of form of suppression of afflictions or hatred or attachment that will eventually become attachment and anger again when the afflictions kick them back up, when the suppression just isn't enough any longer. And we see beings who can even determine their future lives in terms of states of concentration and be in very, very high realms within cyclic existence, like Buddha's last two teachers, but not be liberated and have to experience rebirth again because they only relied on concentration. They only calmed their mind down. And our anger doesn't come from the fact that our mind's not calm enough. It comes from the fact that we have this grasping at the I and phenomena as being truly established, and then we have an inappropriate attention that kind of takes place from that ignorance that grasps at things incorrectly. And then attachment occurs, and hatred occurs, and ignorance occurs, and pride occurs, and all of these lovely things occur that then lead to our contaminated actions. They lead to our impure pathways of intention, that lead to the lower realms, and then our actions of our body and our speech that then give rise to concordant results of suffering in the future. We have to take ourselves through all of these stages of the path in order to create the building blocks and the foundation for us to eventually be able to be sitting on all of those blocks that we've made as fully enlightened Buddhas, because we will all become Buddhas. We have to have that self-confidence. We have to recognize that we have the same mental consciousness that Prince Siddhartha, in the story we read about when Buddha was a prince and did all of that stuff and sat under the Bodhi tree and became enlightened. The Buddha's mental consciousness was the same state that our mental consciousness is in. If we look at him as a practitioner on the path who was still getting rid of afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience. Now we know in the highest Mahayana teachings, Buddha was just emanating. Buddha was already enlightened a long time ago. He was pretending to be a prince, pretending so he could show us all in a very clear and concise way how to become a Buddha. So it doesn't really matter if he's showing us how he did it before or he's doing it then. They are the precise steps that we need to follow in order to achieve the Buddhahood that the Buddha achieved, which is a freedom from fear and a complete infinite happiness. 100% fearlessness, 100% happiness. Not any smaller portion than that was acceptable to Buddha. And the Buddha didn't find the lack of control to be acceptable. He said that's misery. So any lack of control I have is misery. So anything in cyclic existence that goes on is misery. Even the happiness in cyclic existence is misery because it leads every form of happiness has that self-destruct mechanism in it that leads to some sort of greater suffering than almost it would have occurred if it hadn't been there in the first place, because that feeling of loss that's so painful wouldn't have occurred if that happiness that got the thing that you have to lose didn't occur. So the greater, Geshe Dorje Damdu says, we can have a whole life full of happiness and great occurrences and just think everything's wonderful. And all it takes is one real tragedy to wipe out in our minds all of that good feeling, all of those happinesses, all of those things that made us feel so content. One tragedy, one thing that shakes that foundation will erase that board, because that board is cyclic existence. It doesn't have that state of fearlessness and stable happiness that the Buddha has, or that an arhat in Hinayana or arhat would have. So it doesn't have that stability. So we're going to have to learn how to achieve a state that does have that stability if that's what we desire. So the text begins with the foundation of all good qualities is the teacher, of course. So Pabunka says we divide it into 4 categories. The very root of the path, which is how to take a teacher and properly serve him or her. So how to develop faith in thought and action, how to develop faith and how to increase your faith in the teacher being the foundation of all excellent qualities. Knowing that you have to have a teacher if you want to learn anything. This is a very complex thing. You have to learn it exactly right. You can't have a teacher who doesn't know how to present it exactly right. That's not going to cut it. You need the exact path, and you can't have a teacher with a bad motivation, because they won't be motivated out of love and compassion to show you the exact path. They may be jealous that you have a better path than they do and show you the wrong path. So we can see how a teacher is very important and how the right teacher is very important. So we went over that in great depth. But one section of this that I'd like to share with you, so it says there's 4 categories. Let's do all the categories, because I haven't read them all to you yet, I don't think. And if I have, we're going to read them again. So the first is the root of the path is the Lama. Number 2 is, once you have a Lama, how do you train your mind? What do you do? What's the pathway look like once you have a teacher? How do you train your mind? And then number 3 is a request so that you can attain all the favorable conditions for succeeding in the path and stop all the circumstances that might prevent you from doing so. That's number 3. So these are all the categories of source. And then number 4, prayer that in all your future lives you may be taken under the care of a Lama and gain the strength to reach the final end of all the various stages and paths. So we see these as the sections that Pabunka Rinpoche establishes, and at first establishing that the source. So the first stanza of the source, we'll read it. The source of all my good is my kind Lama, my Lord. Bless me first to see that taking myself to him in the proper way is the very root of the path, and grant me then to serve and follow him with all my strength and reverence. We can say him or her in the stanza, but Lama Tsongkhapa's teachers were males. So he's speaking in terms of his own experience. So Lama Tsongkhapa's teachers in that conventional sense were male teachers, Manjushri being one of his teachers, Lama Umapa and the great Sakya Randawa, and Chuje, I forget, his first teacher, the first name was Chuje. You can look it up in the Land of the Snows. I'm not a great historian, but we see that Lama Tsongkhapa had so many great lamas, so many great teachers from the various traditions of, definitely can say Sakya and Kaju, and then some will say Nyingma teachers as well. And then we have the Kadampa teachers, that are right from Atisha's lineage that were still considered just Kadampa lineage. So we see that who his teachers were, and that's the context. So we see this prayer, may I serve and follow him or her with all my strength and reverence. So we see these words, blessed me to perceive. And there's a beautiful commentary here that I haven't read you yet about why Pabunka says these words are used. So I'd like to read this part to you. So it says, bless me here means to embellish me, or to say, transform this condition of my mind. So so the Buddhas don't wash away the sins with water, right? They don't remove our suffering with their hands. They don't give us their realizations. They teach the truth of suchness, and that's how we're liberated. So we know what we're really asking for. We're asking for that pure instruction that will transform our mind. Whatever we need at that moment to transform our mind, that's what the teacher can give us. So we're asking for that. We're praying for that. We're stamping in our mind that's what we want. We're putting it out to the universe and all of our lifetimes universes of consciousness that what we want is to be able to be guided by this teacher, to be able to be blessed, to have our dirty minds change into pure minds. And the way that this will happen is by the teacher. So it says, it's to say, please help me to transform the condition of my mind. A minute ago, my mind was twisted and joined with every kind of bad thought, Pabunka says. So only a minute ago, but now it's not any longer. So we're saying, before I was thinking that the teacher isn't the foundation of all my good qualities. I was thinking that a new car might be, or a new house might be, or some money might be, or something else might be. So let me get it into my head that that's not the case, because a minute ago that's what I thought was the case. So you're asking your mind to remember, because this is an internal job. There's nothing external that the Buddhists can teach us and come to us and, maybe run in front of our car as an animal so we abstain from killing. They can do silly things like that, right? But they can't do something so miraculous as to just turn us into something that we're not. They can only teach us. So we're saying, okay, we're on the first topic of the Lam Rim. So in the Lam Rim Chemo, the meditation session is tell your mind what to do, and then we're going to say, I'm going to glance meditation, then I'm going to tie the relying on the teacher, to the pole, and I'm going to analyze it every which way. And by analyzing it every which way, I'm going to hopefully arrive at a place where my mind is not twisted, wrong, and conjoined with every bad thought. And what in this case is every bad thought? That the source of all of my good isn't a teacher. The source of all my good is something other than a teacher that can teach me how to get rid of the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. There's nothing gooder, better, greater than something that can show you to have fearlessness and infinite happiness. There's nothing higher. There's nothing better than that. And the teacher, who's basically a Buddha or a messenger of the Buddha, if you will, if you want, however you want, a bodhisattva, however you want to look at your teacher, or just someone who's a messenger in the sense of learning it really well from, somebody who was a messenger of the Buddha, in my case, just someone who studied and read some books who can explain it. But we're saying that, I really need to know how to really have happiness, not the contaminated happiness that I keep finding in cyclic existence that's like salt water. I need to be able to find real happiness, 100% happiness. And the only way I can find that, the only being who's been able to achieve that in all of history, the only beings who have been able to achieve that in all of history, of all of beginningless time, are beings who have achieved the state of Buddhahood, who have relied upon a path and who have relied upon a teacher in order to achieve the state of enlightenment. Even the Buddha had teachers, we know this, and then was able to investigate things a little more thoroughly than his teachers because of previous lives of investigation of the proper view that he then was able to investigate more thoroughly. So we can look at the Buddha's life story in so many different ways, so I don't want to get into that point of who the Buddha was or what the Buddha was during his lifetime, but we know that a Buddha has to go through these stages, has to have a teacher, has to learn how to get shamatha, has to learn how to get vipassana, has to have calm abiding, special insight, has to see emptiness, has to have renunciation, has to have bodhicitta, and you don't come, born equipped with knowing what renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness are. You just don't. We don't come equipped with that. We have to have a teacher teach us how. These aren't natural things that we just come up with on our own. Maybe some of the topics we can say, I always thought that. But when it comes to the nature of reality, and it comes to the emptiness of objective existence and how things conventionally exist subjectively, then that becomes a little bit different, and how we can then see that nothing, all phenomena, there is nothing permanent, impermanent, that we can posit as having any inherent existence, any objective existence, any findable, identifiable, singular kind of separateness. But we still have to be able to see how karma works and how virtue creates happiness and non-virtue creates suffering. And if we can't find the middle way between those two places, and we fall into nihilism or substantial existence, we have not found the emptiness that the Buddha talked about. And to find the emptiness that the Buddha talked about will take a lot of refining, a lot of commentaries, a lot of understanding of Nagarjuna and Aryadeva, and how that Nagarjuna and Aryadeva and Buddhapalita and these beings separate their view from those other beings that presented the mind-only view, such as Vasubandhu and Asanga. Vasubandhu teaching more of the Sautrantika view, and maybe some would say Vabhashika view, but eventually moving towards his brother Asanga's view of mind only. And then even Baba Vega's view of we look at the middle way school, we see there's consequence and autonomy. How do we distinguish between what a Baba Vega would believe and what a Buddha Palita would believe? And it's going to require us to look at these things, to see if we can source it out, to see if we've realized it or not. If we think we've realized it, we should be able to read Buddha Palita and Nagarjuna and be like, oh, he means this here, he means that here, he's negating this here and negating that here. Oh, and when we read maybe some of Asanga's text of the middle mind-only school, we can say, oh, that doesn't make sense because there's inherent existence here. And when we read Baba Vega, we can see that true existence is negated, but inherent existence is not negated. And when we read Buddha Palita, we see all of inherent existence is negated. And if we can't distinguish between all of those different things, then we don't know what emptiness is. And if we don't know what emptiness is, it doesn't matter how calm our mind is. We're not going to be able to, we can get our minds pretty calm if we learn a few techniques, but we're not going to be able to have our minds calm and then look at something that is emptiness if you aren't able to distinguish the things that I'm talking about. And this is very, very difficult material and will take my lifetime to sort through. I'm not here to say I understand it in a clear way. I can sort it out in a coarse way. But if we want to end cyclic existence, we need to be able to sort it out in a very subtle way. And that subtle way of sorting things out does not come from partial instructions. I kind of get it. I went to, India for a month, and now I know everything. These kinds of things are wrong views, and these will keep you in everlasting ignorance. They really will. That complacency, that simplifying the path aspect, it's just breathing, or simplifying emptiness is just impermanence. Simplifying the path and misunderstanding the path will leave you in a place where you don't get anywhere, and these teachings won't change your mind. All these teachings will do is there'll be more and more information. You'll sound smarter. You'll be able to talk about them with people and sound like you've done something. You can maybe roll your eyes back in your head and look really like dreamy, but it won't really affect your mind if you don't look at these more finite details. So that's my speech on the finite details. So a minute ago, my mind was messed up. I didn't think that the source of all my good was my Lama. So bless me to be able to transform this condition of my mind from here on out, from what it was to what I'm thinking it is now, which is the source of all my good. Now, in the very next moment, may I be blessed with the good fortune of being able to find and follow my teacher properly with every reverence. May my mind be straightened and become filled with each and every step of the path. This is the thing I ask my Lama. The explanation of the words bless me here applies as well to each of the other verses as they appear. So we're asking for the transforming of the condition of our mind. Previously my mind wasn't moving straight, wasn't moving towards enlightenment. Now I see that I thought before the source of all my good was not my teacher. I thought it was all this other stuff. Now I'm moving straight. May I keep moving straight. And then as we get to the next stanza, we say, okay, I have this life of leisure and opportunity. May I keep realizing this. May I keep seeing how wonderful it is that I have these 8 leisures and so forth. May I not forget this. Bless me to take full advantage of it. Bless me to, and let's read on. So that's the point. So we're going to apply this formula of bless me here means embellish me, or is to say to transform my mind from what it was before I recognize this stanza's stuff. and may I keep realizing this stanza stuff. May I go straight from here, not back up and go back into the wrong way. May I stay in the right way and keep moving forward and keep saying, bless me to do this, and keep moving forward. Bless me to recognize death and impermanence. Bless me, and just keep moving forward and not stop to the point where we can say we have that renunciation. That Lama Tsongkhapa says in the 3 principal paths, day and night, seeking transcendent liberation. Once you have that, you have renunciation. And once you day and night seek Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings, you have this bodhicitta. You have this mind, this aspiring mind that then could actually receive a bodhisattva vow. And you would be well on your way to being a Buddha. And eventually, if you're dull capacity bodhisattva, seeing emptiness and then traversing the 10 bodhisattva grounds and getting rid of those dumb afflictions and, the coarse and subtle afflictions that are gotten rid of through the stages of the 5 paths, and then those imprints of the afflictions, the obstructions to omniscience that are gotten rid of on those last pure grounds, the 8th, 9th, and 10th bodhisattva ground, and then one crosses the 10th bodhisattva ground to the resultant ground of Buddhahood. So we're hoping to stay in a straight line to the resultant ground of Buddhahood. We're hoping that we, from right now, this very second, we don't stop until we're at the completion stage of highest yoga tantra, saying, bless me to, finish putting all of the wind into the central channel. So this is the aspiration that we're making. And when we look at the 6 preparations, the preparations for meditation, where we set up the altar, clean the room and set up the altar, and then arrange images of enlightenment, and then sit down and get into a posture, and then imagine the merit field, and make a 7-limb prayer, and mandala offering. And we're making these aspirations, these kind of prayers. Please bless me to be able to realize, bless me. These are the kind of prayers that we're finding in Lama Tsongkhapa's. Bless me to perceive this. Bless me to understand that. These are similar to the aspirations you'd find at that last part of the 6th preparation in the 6 preparations in the beginning of the Great Treatise on the Stage of the Path to Enlightenment, where Lama Tsongkhapa shows us how to begin a meditation session. So I just wanted to point that out. So the next stanza, bless me to realize that the life of leisure I found just this once is ever so hard to find and ever so valuable. Grant me then to wish and ever stop to wish that I could never, could take its essence night and day. So we know we have this life of leisure, the 8 leisures. We recognize what they are. We aren't born in hell. We aren't a hungry ghost. We aren't an animal. We don't have all of these wrong views. We're born in a world where the Buddha has come into in terms of the teachings are here. We're in a place where the teachings can be found. We're in a central area. We have proper sense faculties. We can read books, we can hear the teachings, and we aren't long life deities. So we know we have these leisures because we can just look at what Lama Tsongkhapa and all these great masters, and Nagarjuna's letter to a friend, and Sakya Randawa points out about the leisures of how 3 of them pertain to the lower realms, 4 of them to the human basis, and 1 to the higher realms, in terms of leisureless states that we are not in. And then we look at the opportunity that we also find presented in the Great Treatise on the Stage of the Path to Enlightenment, and see that we have the 5 internal opportunities. And then when we look at the 5 external opportunities, then it gets a little gray. We could say at a nominal level, we have 4 of the external things. But really, we only have 1 of them present literally. But Lama Tsongkhapa only had 1 of them present literally. And Nagarjuna only had 1 of them present literally. So we can say, if we look at them at a nominal level, if we say the teacher is the Buddha, and then the Buddha is in the world. And if we say that the teacher's teaching and the students are understanding it and the teachings are carrying on, we can also look at it in that way. But if we want to be very literal and technical, which Pabunka says Lama Tsongkhapa is doing in this text, he's not saying, bless me to realize that this life of leisure and opportunity I found just this once. He doesn't use the word opportunity because opportunity for Lama Tsongkhapa hasn't been completely fulfilled in terms of the 5 external factors, because there's no Buddha teaching in the world right now, and there wasn't when Lama Tsongkhapa was alive. The Buddha was long gone. So we have to look at it in those terms. So there's more we can get into, but we're not going to get into more. Ever so hard to find and ever so valuable. So we recognize it's very, very hard to find. It's difficult to achieve because if its causes are difficult to achieve, we have to have ethics and the other 5 perfections, and we have to have clean, pure, aspirational prayers to be able to be human. So we know that those causes are very difficult. We see examples that show the difficulty, that a turtle, if it was at the bottom of the ocean and came up every, thousands of years, waited to come up, and then came up and popped its head through a little donut or yolk that was floating on the surface. That's how rare it is that we have this human basis. That's the likelihood of us getting it again. The likelihood of that turtle coming up from the bottom of the ocean and popping its head up through this yolk. And then in terms of the numbers, there are many more beings in the lower realms than the higher realms, and the likelihood of us going to the lower realms is, compared to the beings that go from the higher realms to the lower realms number atoms in the universe. So the beings that go from the higher realms to the higher realms are like atoms on that fingernail. The beings that go from the lower realms to the lower realms are like atoms in the universe. The beings that go from the lower realms to the higher realms are like atoms on a fingernail. So we see all this reasoning behind why it's ever so hard to find. And why is it so valuable? Because we know we can engage in what Lama Tsongkhapa shows us in the brochures in the Great Treatise on the Stage of the Path to Enlightenment. Right after this, we find, you have the teachings shared in common with beings of small capacity, teachings shared in common with beings of medium capacity, and the teachings for beings of great capacity. Lama Tsongkhapa says, with this life of leisure and opportunity, you can have a good next life. You can abandon the lower realms. You can get a renunciation of the lower realms of cyclic existence, and you can abandon them and have a good next life, and dependence upon the teachings shared in common with beings of small capacity, and dependence upon this human basis of leisure and opportunity. And dependence upon this human basis of leisure and opportunity, you can engage in the teachings shared in common with beings of medium capacity and achieve an abiding nirvana. You can get rid of cyclic existence altogether, 100% guaranteed, by cutting the root of cyclic existence, cutting the origin of cyclic existence with wisdom. And then the Buddha said that in dependence upon this human basis of leisure and opportunity, these 8 leisures, we can become a Buddha. We can get rid of the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. So Lama Tsongkhapa lays that out very briefly right after the section on leisure and opportunity in the Great Treatise on the Stage of the Path to Enlightenment. And that's to show us why it's so valuable. It's ever so valuable. We have this human basis. We can take bodhisattva vows with this human basis. It's an ideal place for us to practice Tantrayana. The tantric texts, many of them were written to a being with a body like us. And when we look at it in terms of the body type that we're meditating on, and the kind of energetic body that we're thinking about follows the pattern of this human basis that we have. So we see that the tantric teachings here, the sutra teachings are here, all of the teachings are here, all of the stages of the path to enlightenment are here, and we have this human basis, which is the best basis from which to practice them. It's stated that the bodhisattvas in the Pure Lands make prayers to be able to be born as humans in this realm that we're in right now, because we're able to hear about suffering and see suffering and generate love and compassion for all sentient beings, and quickly move to the state of Buddhahood, because we have human intelligence and we don't have so much suffering that we can't practice, but we have suffering so that we want to practice, and we can develop renunciation because we have suffering, and we can develop bodhicitta because other sentient beings have suffering around us. So it's really a potent place to be as a human. We have 8 leisures, we have 5 internal opportunities, and arguably we have some of the external opportunities, at least one of them, where there's caring for others. There's benefactors in the world. There's people who will support the teachings, who will materially support the teachings to make sure that they can go on. So there is that. So it says, grant me then to wish and never stop to wish that I could take its essence night and day. So here it's grant me then to bless me to realize that this life of leisure, bless me. Previously, make my mind conditioned to think in a new way. It was wrong before. It was thinking so incorrectly. A minute ago, my mind was twisted wrong and joined with every kind of bad thought, thinking that my life of leisure and opportunity wasn't valuable, wasn't ever so hard to find. So from now on, may I move straight. May I recognize when I wake up, first thing in the morning, I have this incredible life of leisure and opportunity. I can engage in the teachings shared in common with beings of small and medium capacity. I can engage in the teachings for beings of great capacity. May I not forget this. While I'm sleeping, may I not forget this. While I'm waking, may I not forget this. When I'm walking, may I not forget this. When I'm talking, may I not forget that I have this human life of leisure and opportunity, and then wish that I could take its essence night and day. And we know what taking its essence means. We know that abandoning, kind of getting rid of this life, and engaging in a focus on future lives, and then getting rid of samsara altogether, and achieving Buddhahood, achieving fearlessness and infinite happiness, and engaging in the things that will allow us to achieve fearlessness and infinite happiness is taking the essence night and day out of this life. If it's saying, bless me to be able to day and night be able to make use of this human basis I have, to recognize how valuable it is, and then in dependence upon those recognitions of how valuable it is and how hard to find it is and what I can do with this, in dependence upon that, may I take its essence night and day. May I have renunciation, day and night, seeking transcendent liberation. That's what's taking its essence. Day and night, wanting to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So that's number 2. And then number 3, we'll get into a little bit. It's everybody's favorite topic, death and impermanence. And we see that without a firm understanding of this, we won't get anywhere on the path. We just won't. It's just over and over and over again presented as so important. So let me read the stanza, and then I want to give a little bit of commentary, and then we'll see if anybody has maybe any questions. I'm sorry, I only have questions on the Zoom platform we're on, but people are willing, feel free to join the Zoom. BuddhaCenter.com is a live Zoom link whenever we go up live, and then you can even participate, and I can see you. Just please be respectful. Everybody's really invested in studying and changing their minds and trying to become better human beings. And it's not easy to do. And it takes a lot of work. But the effort and the work is worth it. More worth it than any of the work you've ever put in your life to get mundane goals accomplished. Much more worth it. My body and the life in it are fleeting as the bubbles in the sea froth of a wave. Bless me first, lest to recall the death that will destroy me soon, and help me find sure knowledge that after I've died, the things I've done, the white or black, and what those deeds will bring to me, follow always close behind, as certain as my shadow. Okay, so death and impermanence. I'm not going to talk too much tonight about it, but what I do want to talk about is at the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, we see that the Buddha first taught the truth of suffering. He said this is the superior truth of suffering. And when we look at each of the Four Noble Truths, there are 4 attributes that each of those 4 Noble Truths have. We're not going to get into that tonight. We can another time. But when we look at the attributes of the 4 Noble Truths, the first Noble Truth, the superior truth of suffering, we see that the first aspect of the superior truth of suffering is that it's impermanent. So the Buddha first taught impermanence. So when it's interesting. The Buddha first taught impermanence, taught that the Four Noble Truth, the truth of suffering. Suffering is impermanent. It occurs occasionally. It's not always occurring. So things come into being and come out of being. They aren't just always fixed there in terms of this is the superior truth of suffering. So the Buddha stated that that this impermanence was the first kind of factor of this first noble truth. And then the last teaching that the Buddha gave, the Buddha talked about impermanence. He said that all composite phenomena are impermanent, all contaminated things are in the nature of suffering, all phenomena are in the nature of selflessness and emptiness, and nirvana is peace. So we see the Buddha stated at the beginning, this is the superior truth of suffering. Suffering is impermanent. Suffering, selfless and impure or empty. So we find these 4 attributes of the first noble truth, and the first thing being that it's impermanent. So the Buddha said that there's coarse and subtle impermanence. So the coarse impermanence, things like last year ends, and then there's next year. The human body will die, these kind of coarse things. And then there's a subtle impermanence that 1,000 moments a second, we're moving towards those things. We're moving towards birth, aging, sickness, and death. That the leaves on the trees, when they come on, have already started to die. When we are conceived, we've already started to die. We've already started this process we're moving so quick towards. But we feel we have this real permanent state. We feel that we're so solid, and then that makes us not focus on spirituality. We think we have time. We think that, when we're 20, we think we're going to live forever. We don't hold on to this idea of impermanence, that we're moving quickly towards death. We don't have this in the forefront of our mind. Therefore, our mind doesn't focus on the things that will really give us lasting happiness and peace. So it's that simple. And in the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, Lama Tsongkhapa talks about the drawbacks of not thinking about suffering. And when we look at the drawbacks of not thinking about suffering, they're pretty detrimental. It says that, as previously mentioned, I want to read this part. I think it's super important, and then we'll get to some questions maybe. There are 4 errors that impede your taking full advantage of this life. So what's going to make it so I don't take advantage of leisure and opportunity? 1, conceiving the impure to be pure. Okay? Number 2, suffering to be happiness. Number 3, impermanence to be permanent. And number 4, the selfless to have a self. Initially, it's merely the conception of the impermanent to be permanent that is the avenue to much of your injury. So it's saying you're hurting yourself by thinking you're permanent. All the injuries, all the pain, all the suffering that's happening to you, if we want to look at the real coarse thing that's making it occur, it's because you think you're permanent. So it says, this conception is twofold, coarse and subtle. Of these two, in the case of coarse impermanence, which is your death, which I just mentioned, our body's going to die, the avenue of injury. So how do we get hurt by this thought? The avenue of injury is the very thought, I won't die. I'm not going to die. Everyone has the idea that death will come later, at the end. Well, when the end comes, we talk in those terms, but we don't realize that could be in 5 minutes. And this meditation on death and impermanence, we just realized that Lori, the person I love so much, we were moving through our lives, everything was going. We had the blip of breast cancer and thought that we had gotten over that, and we're like, wow, we really cheated death. And then get a scan and Lori has a brain tumor. So that is how quickly things happen, but we don't believe they're going to. Now, luckily, Lori and I have a little taste of this. So we weren't hit by a train and so surprised that it could happen because we study death and impermanence. And then when my time to die comes, we'll see if I have prepared and studied enough death and impermanence, or if I'm shocked, or if I'm so scared because I'm not prepared. So it says this is the avenue of injury. However, with each passing day, people think, I'm not going to die today. I won't die today. And then they cling to this thought until the moment of death. Oh, maybe there'll be just one. I watch myself do this with Rinpoche, clinging right to the end that he's not going to die today. I watch myself do this with another person. I imagine how much I'm clinging to myself. If you are obstructed by such an attitude and not to bring its remedy to mind, you will continue to think that you will remain in this life. And what happens? Then, as long as you have this attitude, you will continually think only of how to achieve happiness and evade suffering in this life alone, thinking, oh, I need this, I need that to be happy. And you will not engage in religious practice because you do not think about things of great importance, such as future lives, liberation, and omniscience. Although you may perchance engage in study, reflection, and meditation, it will only be for the sake of this life, and whatever virtue you create will be meager in strength. Moreover, since your practice will be involved with wrongdoing, sins, infractions, it'd be rare for these virtuous activities not to be mixed with causes for miserable realms. Even if you try to engage in practices directed towards future lives, you won't even be able to because your laziness and procrastination will think, I'll do it eventually, by passing time in distraction with sleep, lethargy, senseless talk, eating, drinking, and you will not attain proper achievement, which comes through great effort. And when we look later on in the Lam Rim at the perfections, we see that this meditation we're going to learn next week on death and impermanence is what makes you have joyous effort, which makes you, as a bodhisattva, day and night, want to work for the sake of all sentient beings. So that's my talk for this evening. I feel so blessed to have people listening because that allows me to create the merit of giving a teaching. I feel so blessed to be able to give the teaching because Kensur Geshe Wandak was so kind to me, and Geshe Lobsang Gontuo was so kind to me. His Holiness the Dalai Lama is so kind to be able to share these teachings. And now Umzala Geshe Aga, who I'm talking with regularly, is teaching me now. And Geshe Mala Tenzin Ladran is just so kind to me. And Geshe Dorje Damdu, who I'm taking 3 classes a week with, just amazing. So the source of all my good is my kind teachers. And I see that as the foundation. I feel so blessed to have realized that while Rinpoche was alive, and to know that I hold that in my mind at all times. Rinpoche is on my mind at all times during the day. I'm not saying every moment. I don't have renunciation, but an hour does not pass where I don't think of Rinpoche as inseparable from the deity, is inseparable from Tara. So there's no time in the day that doesn't and so I really feel so blessed to have that in my mind as a springboard to be able to realize leisure and opportunity and death and impermanence and going for refuge and what karma and its results mean, and what the three highest higher trainings are, and renunciation, and then bodhicitta is, and then how I could realize emptiness by uniting the subjective and objective clear light. So I feel so blessed. Anyone have any questions? I hope you all feel so blessed too. If we don't have any questions, we'll wrap it up. I appreciate you. Please keep saying prayers for Lori. Anyone who's just joined or anyone who's on, my wife, my partner, Lori, has been diagnosed with a brain tumor. We don't know if it's cancer or not cancer. We don't know. We're in the process of finding out things. We have all the great lamas and beings doing prayers, and I would ask you all as holy beings who are trying to transform your minds and become holier and holier every day, hopefully, to say prayers for Lori Rankin. So I dedicate this virtue that I've created to becoming a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, and having any of the obstacles for Lori removed, because she was so kind to be the benefactor for Rinpoche. My benefactor allows me to be able to keep studying and not have to go to work. And she was just so kind, and it's so sad that somebody who's been so kind and supported this community so much, and barely knew Rinpoche and took Rinpoche into her home, our home, because of that karmic connection that was so strong, and never really asked for anything other than Rinpoche's love, and got it wholeheartedly. So if we could just return that kindness by saying prayers, I would really appreciate that. And if you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you don't have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If there's grasping, you do not have the view. And we should all pray to be able to have long lives, because we have this life of leisure and opportunity. It's this basis from which we can practice day and night. So this is the reason. We aren't attached to this life if we're praying for it to be longer, because our reason for wanting it to be longer is to be able to become Buddhas. And we know we're in the best possible state to work with to become Buddhas. And I feel very, very kind of calm of mind, though, to know that, as Tenzin Ladrin-La, Geshe-ma Ladrin-La said to me today, that we'll say all the prayers and we do everything, and this is why we practice Dharma, and this is why we do everything that we do, but we also have to deal with reality and understand what reality is. And I feel so fortunate for Lori that she met with a totally qualified guru and established a relationship like that, and probably thinks about him like I do. I don't know. I only know my mind, right? I only know mine.
I do.
So anyway, I just want to say thank you to all of you. And thank you, everyone, on Zoom and Facebook and TikTok and all of these things. And we'll do the closing prayers and so forth. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the Immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha, Gautama, I pay homage. And we'll do a Sanskrit, concluding mandala offering, Thanksgiving mandala offering. And I'll just do it in Tibetan. Da im ni yu ji me du ra ri ra li ni de yen ba di zan ye yin du mi de u ai ro nan da yin la yu ba yo da gi jin ni za ve ge wa di yen dan jo a gun la gam ben na ye ba ye zun lu zan ra ba yi den be nien bo rin du ze ye yo idam guru rana mandala gani radayami I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised to Supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokitesvara, Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. Nganri rawe gorwe shinjan dir mendan dewa malu yongwe ne jenre ziwan enzin yadzo yi Jabezi de badu den yo yi. In all of our lives, may we never be separated from Kensar Geshe Wandak. May we create all of the causes and accumulations necessary to make that possible, whether it's in ordinary worlds where he emanates or she emanates, or when we become Arya Bodhisattvas, when we meet him or her in the enjoyment body and become Buddhas and never separate in any of our lives from Kensar Geshe Wandak until we become Buddhas, and then help Kensar Geshe Wandak in whatever form we need to lead all sentient beings to a state of fearlessness and infinite happiness that Buddhahood only can give. Thank you, all of you. I appreciate you so much. Everybody, I hope you have a great week. We'll see you on Sunday where we have Lamrim Chemo. Again, great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, and we're a little bit in sync, but not completely in sync with the source of all my good. But I think you'll find that the two really serve as ornaments for each other. And I hope that you also tomorrow and the next day open up Lama Tsongkhapa's texts and read them a little bit. And calm your mind down a little bit and read the Lama Tsongkhapa's texts and read the Indian Pandits' texts. And by doing those things, hopefully you can have the wisdom arisen from hearing, contemplation, and meditation and become Buddhas. And if you get there before me, please help. Take care, everybody. Have a great time.